Marcus Ellington stepped out his sleek black car and into the warm afternoon sun. He was tall, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark trousers that fit him like a glove. He carried a slim briefcase in one hand and a to-go coffee in the other. His life was all about meetings, deals, and the next big idea. But today, he felt tired in a way that money could not fix. He decided to take a break from his glass tower office and have lunch in the city plaza below. The plaza was wide and open, with high trees planted in neat rows and smooth stone benches. Food trucks lined one side, selling tacos, sushi rolls, and fragrant curry. Business people, tourists, and students milled about, their voices blending into a gentle buzz. Marcus walked among the tables, scanning the crowds for a free seat. He liked to eat where he could watch the city move. He found an empty spot under a maple tree and set down his briefcase. Before he could order his meal, his foot brushed something solid on the ground. He looked down and saw a small folding table, scratched and worn. On it sat a chessboard. The pieces were simple, plastic and colored black and white. Next to the table, a crowd of people stood watching two players. One was a young girl, no older than 12. She had dark skin, her hair in neat braids tied with bright ribbons. She looked small, wearing worn jeans and a faded sweatshirt. Yet her eyes shone with quiet confidence. The other player was a middle-aged man who wore a badge identifying him as a youth chess coach. He leaned forward, fingers steepled, staring intently at the board. The crowd clapped quietly as the coach made his move. The girl waited until the applause died down. Then she reached out and slid her bishop across the board. It was a bold move that threatened the coach's king. He paused, frowning. He had not seen that coming. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some spectators exchanged excited whispers. The coach's fingers trembled as he moved a pawn to defend. But it was too late. With a final slide of her rook, the girl declared checkmate. A cheer rose from the onlookers. They patted the coach on the back and then turned to congratulate the girl. They offered her small bills and coins. She waved their hands away, shaking her head. She did not take money for playing. Her name, someone shouted, was Kiara Jackson, but most called her Kiki. She smiled shyly, her eyes flicking to a corner of the plaza where a woman sat on a low stone wall. The woman's clothes were stained, and she cradled a ragged bag at her feet. She watched her daughter with proud eyes, even as she pretended not to care. Marcus felt a tug in his chest. He loved games of skill. He had played chess as a child, then had let it go as work took over. He glanced at the folding table, the crowd, and then back at the girl. He took a sip of his coffee and walked over, weaving between curious onlookers. The coach was gathering his pieces and talking quietly to his assistant, clearly amazed. Marcus greeted them, introduced himself, and asked if he could play next. They laughed. The coach said, "Sir, I think you might find a strong challenge." "Here," Marcus smiled. He did not mind losing. He enjoyed the chance to test himself. The coach cleared the table and set the board again. Marcus sat down, careful to keep his suit clean. He opened his briefcase and placed his coffee beside it. Around them, the plaza noise faded into a hush. People sensed an important moment. Kiki's mother stood and brushed a loose ribbon from her daughter's hair. She whispered something, and Kiara nodded. The coach explained the rules for a friendly match. No time limit, just a simple game for fun. Marcus nodded. He moved his pawn forward to open. Kiara watched his move, her head tilted, her lips pressing together. As the game began, Marcus felt a thrill. He remembered old strategies. He brought out his queen, earlier risky choice, but one he thought would confuse a young player. The crowd leaned in, Some places emptied as people gathered for a real show. Kiki's eyes sparkled. She did not rush. She studied Marcus's posture, his eyes, the way he moved. Then she moved her knight in a graceful arc that surprised him. He blinked. He did not expect such a clever twist. The knight threatened his queen. His heart skipped a beat. He had to protect his most powerful piece. The coach whispered to his assistant, "She's seen that in advanced play." Marcus felt sweat on his forehead despite the mild air. He asked Kiki, "Where did you learn that?" She shrugged and said softly, "I read a book in the library." Marcus nodded, impressed. He had libraries in his own home, but he had never found that exact move there. He adjusted his strategy. He tried to trap her in a corner, sacrificing a pawn. But Kiara anticipated every trap. She moved her bishop across the board, blocking his knight. With each move, she seemed to think 3 steps ahead. Marcus admired her calm. She seemed relaxed in a way he had forgotten. As the game went on, shadows lengthened across the plaza. The sun sank lower, painting the buildings gold. Shoppers along the arcades paused to look at the chess match. A child pointed and tugged a parent's sleeve. A street musician stopped playing to watch. None of this distracted Kiki. She thought as if the world had melted away. Marcus tried one last tactic, a lure of his queen. He offered her a chance to take it. She paused, then moved her pawn instead. He realized she had set a trap. He gasped. As he saw it too late, his king stood alone, vulnerable. With a gentle slide of her pawn, Kiara declared checkmate. The crowd burst into applause. Marcus took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He laughed, a sound of pure surprise and delight. He reached across the table to shake the girl's hand. "You're amazing," he said. "I haven't lost like that in years." Kiki looked up at him, her face bright and calm. She tucked a braid behind her ear. "Thank you," she said. "I like to play." Marcus stood up and looked around. His briefcase and coffee were forgotten. He saw Kiki's mother wipe her eyes. She held out a hand for her daughter, but Kiki stayed at the table, basking in the moment. Marcus looked at the coach and nodded. "I want to know more," he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp bill. He held it out to Kiki's. "Mother, please accept this," he said. "For lunch today." The mother shook her head quickly. "No, sir. We don't take charity." Marcus smiled and tucked the bill away. He did not want charity either. He wanted to help respectfully. He said, "I have an idea. How about we meet again tomorrow? You and your daughter can join me for a proper chess match, no charge. Just play for fun." The mother glanced at Kiki, who nodded. The boyhood spark in Marcus's eyes had returned. The plaza felt alive with possibility. In that moment, a stranger's kindness and a hidden genius had come together, and both of them would never be the same again. The next morning, the sun rose over the city's tall buildings like a golden promise. Kiara woke before dawn. Her small body curled under a thin blanket in the corner of the crowded shelter. She rubbed her eyes and stared at the high ceiling. Today was special. She would meet Marcus Ellington again and play chess with him inside his big glass building. Her heart beat fast, but she felt a soft thrill in her chest. She climbed out of bed and tiptoed past the other sleepers. In the kitchen area, her mother, Denise, stirred oatmeal in a large pot. Steam rose in gentle swirls. Denise looked tired but smiled when she saw Kiara. "Good morning, champ," she whispered, her voice warm. She ladled the oatmeal into 2 bowls and handed one to Kiara. "Eat up. You need energy today." Kiara thanked her mother and spooned the porridge carefully. It tasted sweet with cinnamon and a pinch of sugar. As she ate, she thought about the day ahead. Yesterday's game had been fun. She remembered Marcus's surprised laugh and how the crowd had cheered for her. But today would be different. They would sit inside a fancy building with smooth floors and soft chairs. She had never been inside a place like that. After breakfast, Denise helped Kiara tie her shoes and tie a fresh ribbon into her braid. "Remember," she said, "just be yourself. Play the game you love." Kiara nodded. She packed her worn backpack with her folding chessboard and a small towel. Denise tucked a packet of crackers into the bag. "Just in case," she said. They stepped out into the cool morning air. The streets were quiet, with only a few cars gliding by. The city felt calm before the rush. Kiara and Denise caught a bus downtown. Kiara pressed her forehead to the window and watched buildings drift by. She felt both nervous and excited. She squeezed her mother's hand. Denise gave a reassuring smile. When they arrived at Marcus Ellington's headquarters, the building rose above them like a giant of glass and steel. Its walls reflected the sky and clouds, making it seem to float. Kiara's breath caught in her throat. Denise held her close. "Are you okay?" she asked. Kiara nodded, but her legs trembled. Inside the lobby, cool air and soft music greeted them. A receptionist in a neat uniform smiled. "Good morning. You must be Ms. Jackson and little Kiara." Her voice was gentle. "Mr. Ellington is expecting you." She pressed a button on her desk, and a glass door slid open. Beyond, a wide atrium stretched upward. Light poured through a skylight, touching potted plants and gleaming tables. A few people in suits sipped coffee and read papers. Kiara's eyes widened at the sight. Denise gave her a quick hug and whispered, "Go on. I'll be right here." Kiara stepped forward, clutching her backpack strap. She felt like she was walking into a dream. At a corner table, Marcus stood waiting. He wore a soft sweater instead of yesterday's shirt. He waved as they approached. "Good morning, Kiara." "Denise." His tone was warm, without any hint of formality. Denise smiled and nodded. She took a seat on a nearby bench. Marcus guided Kiara to a chair at the table. He gestured to the chessboard she had brought. "You brought your own board," he said. "That's wonderful." Kiara set up the pieces. Carefully, the plastic squares clicked under her fingers. Marcus watched with interest. "Your board looks well loved," he said. "You play often?" She shrugged. "I play whenever I can find someone, and sometimes by myself. I study moves." "From my library book." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "You taught yourself?" Kiara nodded. "I read a lot. I practice. I learn." Marcus smiled. "I admire that. I think we'll have a good game today." He removed a small wooden box from his briefcase and opened it. Inside were two simple, polished wooden chess clocks. "I thought we might try timed play," he said. "If that's okay." Kiara looked at the clock, curious. Marcus tapped a button. "We each get 10 minutes, he explained. "When it's your turn, press your side to start my clock. This way, we keep the game moving." Kiara pressed her side. The digital numbers lit up in green. She had never used a timer before, but she felt eager to learn. Marcus sat and opened his briefcase again. This time he took out a thick notebook and a pen. "After the game," he said, "I'd like to write down a few things about your strategy. Would that be all right?" Kiara hesitated. She had never shared her secrets. She closed her eyes for a moment, then nodded. Okay, the game began. Marcus opened with a classic king's pawn move. His clock started ticking. Kiara paused, her finger resting on her knight. She thought quickly. Then she moved a pawn in front of her queen 2 squares forward. It was bold. Marcus's smile faded into concentration. As the pieces danced and the clocks clicked, People in the atrium glanced over. Some whispered, "Is that the street girl from yesterday?" Others said, "Even the CEO's notebook can't distract her." The air filled with a quiet buzz. Kiara felt the pressure of the timer, but she remembered Marcus's gentle words. Play for fun. She breathed in and out, her mind focusing on the board. She watched his moves, predicted his plans. When her clock ticked low, she calmly pressed it and made her move. At one point, Marcus's bishop swept across the board, threatening her knight and rook. The timer ticked down to 5 seconds. Kiara closed her eyes, then moved her knight into a safe square, even putting his bishop in danger. Marcus blinked. He had not expected that. Very clever, he said, pausing his clock to make a note. Kiara felt a flush of pride. She pressed. Her clock and the game continued. Halfway through, Marcus leaned back. His sweater sleeve rode up, revealing a sleek watch. He tapped it and checked the time. "You're doing great," he said. "I can see why you win so often." Kiara smiled. Shyly, she glanced at her mother, who gave her an encouraging nod. Kiara felt a surge of confidence. She decided to try something new, an unusual opening she had read about. She moved her rook to the center before moving any pawns. Marcus frowned, astonished. He had never seen that tactic used so early. People gathered around again. Their whispered excitement filled the space. A security guard stopped to watch. A group of interns leaned against a pillar, pointing and whispering. Marcus looked at Kiara with delight, then at his clock. His time was running low, only 30 seconds remained. He made a quick move, capturing her pawn but leaving his king open. Kiara's eyes lit up. She saw the chance and moved her queen in a sweep that pinched his king between 2 rooks. He gasped. His clock blinked red. He pressed it with one hand, then reached across to shake hers. Checkmate. The crowd clapped and cheered. Marcus closed his notebook and smiled broadly. "I think it's safe to say you're a natural genius." Kiara's face glowed. She picked up her clock and turned it off. She packed away her board carefully. Marcus closed the wooden box and placed it back in his briefcase. Then he did something unexpected. He opened his briefcase again and took out 2 small gift boxes wrapped in plain brown paper. He handed one to Kiara and one to Denise. "This is for you both," he said. "Thank you for playing with me." Kiara and Denise opened the boxes. Inside, each found a simple silver keychain engraved with a tiny chess knight. Underneath, a note, "For the best player I've ever met." Denise's eyes filled with tears. She hugged the keychain to her chest. Kiara examined hers carefully. The knight's shape was smooth and cool in her palm. She smiled at Marcus. Afterward, Marcus led them to a small cafe inside the building. He ordered hot chocolate and pastries for them. They sat at a round table by a window that looked out over the plaza. The world outside bustled, but inside they felt safe and calm. As they nibbled croissants, Marcus talked about his own childhood, about how his father taught him chess at age 8. He told stories of tournaments he had lost and games he had won. Kiara listened, enthralled. She told him about her library book, how she had studied each move until she could remember it. Denise sipped her drink and watched them. She saw how Marcus treated Kiara not as a poor street girl, but as an equal. She felt grateful and hopeful. When the meeting ended, Marcus walked them to the lobby. He pressed a button on an elevator panel and the doors slid open. Kiara and Denise stepped in. The walls of the elevator were mirror smooth. They rose past many floors in silence. At street level, the receptionist waved goodbye. Outside, the city sun glowed warmly. Marcus shook Denise's hand and ruffled Kiara's hair. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. Kiara nodded eagerly. Denise paused, then smiled. Thank you, she said. We would like that. As they walked away, Kiara looked back at the shiny building. She held her new keychain tightly. She knew her life was changing, one chess match at a time. And she felt for the first time that she belonged somewhere more than on park benches and in library corners. Her genius had opened a door, and she was ready to step through. The morning light spilled through the tall windows of the Foundation's chess room as Kiara stepped inside. Her small frame felt even smaller among the heavy wooden tables and framed photographs of past champions lining the walls. She carried her backpack and the silver knight keychain Marcus had given her. Marcus stood by the door, smiling. Ready for another day of play? He asked. Kiara nodded, though her stomach fluttered. She loved chess, but this setting felt more serious. Then the plaza or the atrium the room filled quickly. Boys and girls in neat uniforms with crests and ties gathered around the tables. Some whispered as Kiara walked by. A tall boy in a crisp blazer nudged his friend. That's the street girl, he whispered. His friend glanced at Kiara, then turned away. Kiara's mother, Denise, stood nearby in a visitor's area. She offered Kiara a gentle nod. Kiara took a deep breath and walked to an empty table. A coach named Miss Ramirez greeted her. She had kind eyes but a firm tone. Welcome, Kiara. Today we'll practice openings and endgames. Kiara sat and unpacked her folding board. Ms. Ramirez watched her carefully. You know basic openings, yes? She asked. Kiara nodded. I learned many from my book. I practice on my own. The other children exchanged surprised looks. One girl raised her hand. You have just one book? Kiara shook her head. No, I read many books in the library. The girl frowned and whispered to her neighbor. Kiara felt a sting but kept her eyes on the board. Marcus walked among the tables, observing each player. He paused beside Kiara. Show me your favorite opening, he said quietly. Kiara placed her pawn in front of her queen's bishop. Marcus watched with a smile. Interesting choice. Not many use that in formal play. Kiara pressed her lips together. I like it. It surprises my opponent. Class began. Miss Ramirez called out pairs for practice games. Kiara was paired with a boy named Leon, who was known for his quick, aggressive style. Leon set up the pieces and glared at Kiara. He moved his pawn 2 squares forward. Your move, street girl, he sneered. Other children giggled. Kiara steadied her breath. She had faced unkind words before. She moved her knight to defend her pawn. Leon's eyes narrowed. He lunged at the board, capturing her pawn with a swift knight move. Kiara watched, then moved her bishop to pin his knight against his queen. Leon looked shocked. The classroom, quieted as other players watched. Leon stammered and tried to rescue his knight. Kiara's next move trapped his king in the corner. She looked up. Leon's face flushed. He slammed his hand on the table, then stormed away, leaving his board sprawled. The other players watched, unsure how to react. Miss Ramirez approached and gently reset Leon's board. Good game, Kiara, she said softly. Well played. Kiara felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She turned to Marcus, who nodded in pride. You handled that well, he said. Don't let words shake you. Kiara managed a small smile. After practice, Marcus led Kiara and Denise to a small office. He closed the door behind them. I heard about Leon, he said, folding his hands. I'm sorry you faced that. We will address it. No one should insult you here. Denise touched Kiara's shoulder. You did great, she said. Marcus opened a folder. I want to arrange private coaching with our best trainer, Mr. Sullivan. He slid a paper across the desk. This will cover your tuition and living costs at our partner school. You'll have your own room and go to classes. You'll also get chess lessons 5 days a week. Kiara's eyes widened. She looked at Denise, then back at Marcus. I don't want to be a charity case, she said quietly. Marcus shook his head. Not charity, a scholarship. You earned it with your talent and hard work. Denise squeezed Kiara's hand. This could change our lives, Kiki. Kiara bit her lip. She thought of the shelter's noise at night, the crowded beds, the endless waiting. She thought of her mother working 2 jobs and still falling short. She looked at Marcus's earnest face and nodded. The next week, Kiara moved into a small dorm near the school. The building was clean, with bright corridors and a cozy common room. She shared a room with 2 other girls who played violin and basketball. They were polite but cautious, curious about the quiet girl who only spoke about chess. Kiara unpacked her few belongings, her library books, her folding board, and her clothes. She pinned her silver Nike keychain on her bag, her reminder of Marcus's belief in her. Her first day of classes felt overwhelming. Algebra, history, science subjects she had only glimpsed in library books spread before her. The teachers spoke quickly, their lessons peppered with terms she had never heard. She tried to follow, taking notes, but her mind drifted to a chess position she wanted to analyze. During lunch, she sat alone at a table, staring at the pieces in her backpack. A girl named Amina approached. Hi, I'm Amina. You're Kiara, right? The chess girl. Kiara nodded. Amina smiled. I play too. Mind if I watch? Kiara hesitated, then shrugged. You can sit, she said softly. Amina pulled out her own board. Let's play a quick game. They set up on the picnic table. Outside, students walked by, some staring, some nodding hello. Kiara felt calmer with Amina beside her. They played an opening Kiara recognized. Amina asked questions about Kiara's tactics and seemed genuinely interested. Kiara explained each move. Amina listened with bright eyes. When Kiara won, they laughed. You're really good, Amina said. Kiara smiled. For the first time, she felt accepted here. Chess club met after school. Dozens of students gathered, chatting and rearranging boards. Mr. Sullivan, a tall man with gentle eyes, welcomed Kiara. He guided her to a table where a championship trophy glinted under the lights. This was won last year by a talented sophomore, he explained. Maybe you'll be next. Kiara felt a thrill. The club began a small tournament. Kiara played 3 matches that evening. Each opponent posed a new challenge. One focused on trap openings, one on endgame precision, one on speed. Play. Kiara adapted, combining what she had learned from her library books with fresh insights from Marcus's timed games. She won each match, moving through the bracket. Her final opponent was Amina, who had also advanced. They faced each other across the board. Amina opened with a queen's gambit. Kiara recognized it but chose a rare defense. The game felt smooth, each move flowing naturally. They watched each other's eyes, smiling at clever exchanges. Finally, Kiara sacrificed her rook to force a winning endgame. She looked up and saw Amina's respectful nod. They shook hands as the club members cheered. Mr. Sullivan placed the trophy in front of Kiara. Well done, he said. Kiara held the trophy carefully. It felt heavy but good. Walking back to the dorm, Kiara and Amina talked about their lives. Amina shared her dreams of studying medicine. Kiara spoke about her mother and the books she loved. They laughed at small jokes and compared favorite chess puzzles. Kiara realized she was not alone anymore. That night, Kiara wrote in her notebook of moves openings, traps, endgames, while Denise read the books she had carried from the library. Denise looked up and smiled. "You're shining," she said. Kiara closed the notebook. She touched her keychain. She thought of Marcus and his quiet faith in her. She thought of the crowded plaza and the thrill of surprise in his eyes when she first defeated him. Her world had grown wider and harder, and more hopeful all at once. She felt the weight of expectation, but also the glow of possibility. She fell asleep dreaming of the next game, eager for the battles ahead, confident that her genius would lead her. And deep inside, she believed that one day she would show the world that a homeless girl could become a champion, not by luck or charity, but by the strength of her mind and heart. The morning of the regional championship, Kiara stepped into the tournament hall and felt a rush of nerves. Rows of tables stretched before her, each with a red and white chessboard and 2 silent clocks. The hum of conversation filled the air as players and parents found their seats. Denise sat in the front row, clutching her purse. Marcus stood near the registration desk, talking with officials in neat suits. He waved when he saw Kiara and gave her a thumbs up. Kiara offered him a small smile, then breathed deeply. She set up her board and glanced around. Faces of other children stared back at her, some confident, some shy. A boy from her school nodded, and Kiara nodded back. She remembered what Marcus had told her. Focus on the game, not the audience. She let her hands rest lightly on her knees and closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them, calm and ready. The first round began. Kiara's opponent was a tall girl named Sophia. Sophia opened with a quick pawn advance, and Kiara responded by moving her knight to a safe square. As moves clicked back and forth, the hall grew quiet. Spectators leaned in. Denise sat forward, breath held. Marcus stepped to the side, watching every play. Kiara felt at home in the silence. She traced each piece's path in her mind, seeing threats and opportunities. When Sophia made a risky bishop trade, Kiara pounced. She sacrificed a pawn to trap Sophia's queen in the center. The clock ticked down and Sophia's hand hesitated. Finally, she pressed her clock and moved. But it was too late. Kiara swept in with her queen and declared checkmate. A ripple of applause ran through the room. Kiara pressed her clock one last time, then reached out to shake Sophia's hand. "Good game," she said softly. Denise wiped her eyes and mouthed, "I'm so proud." Marcus gave Kiara a quiet nod and slipped her a small folded note. She opened it. "Round 2, table 5, keep going." Kiara tucked it into her pocket and gathered her pieces. Between rounds, a reporter from a local TV station approached Marcus. She had a microphone and a camera crew behind her. "Mr. Ellington," she said, "can we talk to the young star who beat you? We'd love to broadcast her story, how a homeless girl rose to the top. The public will be inspired." Marcus hesitated. He looked at Kiara, who was lining up her. "Next opponent," he said. "Let me check with her." He excused himself and crouched by Kiara's chair. "They want to film you on camera," he whispered. "Tell your story, show how far you've come." Kiara's eyes widened. She shook her head. "No," she said. "I don't want people to see me like that. They'll only see the poor girl, not the player." Marcus frowned but nodded. "Okay, I respect that." He rose and turned to the reporter. "Thank you, but Kiara prefers privacy today." The reporter looked disappointed but smiled. "Perhaps later." Marcus forced a smile. "Perhaps." Kiara won her second match, then the third. Each victory felt like proof that she belonged here. But after her fourth game, as she packed her board, a voice called, Kiara Jackson. She looked up. A woman in a smart suit, clipboard in hand, stepped forward. "I'm with the Education Board. We've heard about your talent. We'd like to offer you a full scholarship at the state's top academy. We just need to discuss your background, your current address, your living situation." Kiara's heart thudded. She pressed her lips together and looked at Denise. Her mother stood, face pale. "We're fine," Denise said, voice trembling. "We don't need more paperwork." The board member smiled tightly. "It's standard procedure. You'll get free tuition, room and board, extracurriculars." Kiara interrupted, voice small but firm. "I don't want my life on paper. I just want to play." The board member's smile faded. "I'm sorry, but we need details." Marcus stepped between them. "Enough," he said quietly. "Kiara's decision." He turned to Kiara. "Is this okay?" Kiara shook her head and sank into her chair. The board member glanced at Marcus, then tapped her clipboard. "Very well. But remember, this offer stands." She walked away, leaving a hush behind. Denise wrapped her arm around Kiara's shoulders. "You did good, baby," she whispered. Kiara nodded but felt shaken. She thought of the shelter's number pinned on her shirt, when she volunteered as a child, a number she never wanted to share again. Marcus guided Kiara to a quiet corner. "I'm sorry you had to face that," he said. "You deserve to choose your path." Kiara looked at him, eyes bright. "I don't want anyone telling my story. I'll work hard and people will see me for me." Marcus studied her face, pride shining in his eyes. The final round began. Kiara's opponent was Amina, her friend and rival from school. They stood at table 7, hands poised. No harsh words hung between them, just mutual respect. They moved through the opening quickly. Kiara remembered the game they had played in lunch breaks, the smiles they shared over clever tactics. This time, though, the stakes were higher. Mid-game, Amina trapped Kiara's rook in a clever pin. Kiara's time ticked down to seconds. She pressed her clock, held her breath, and then sacrificed her bishop to break free. The audience gasped as she turned a weak position into an endgame with her queen and knight. With one final knight fork, she won. The crowd erupted. Kiara looked at Amina, who nodded with a grin. They shook hands, and Kiara felt relief and joy flood her. She had faced players, reporters, and officials, and still triumphed by her own skill. After the games, Marcus led Kiara and Denise to his car. He opened the back door and helped Kiara in. Denise climbed in beside her. On the drive back, the city lights blurred outside. Denise stared at the silver knight keychain swinging from Kiara's bag. "You did more than win," she said softly. "You showed everyone who you are." Kiara pressed her hand to the window. "I want to keep playing quietly," she said. "I don't need stories about a homeless girl. I need people to see my moves." Marcus started the engine. "Then we'll protect you," he said. "No more cameras, no more forms. We'll keep it simple. I've talked to my team. We'll arrange tournaments where you can play under your name, not your background. And I want to help your mother with her work, so you don't worry." Denise looked at him gratefully. "Thank you," she said. Kiara nodded. That night, back at the dorm, Kiara unpacked her board and set up a single pawn in the middle of her desk. She lay on her bunk and stared at the ceiling, thinking of the day's events. The reporter's question, the board member's demand, the final checkmate. She felt both proud and nervous. She touched her keychain and whispered, "I'll show them who I am." Below her bed, her bag lay open with her papers and library books. She picked up a notebook and sketched the tournament bracket, writing her name at the top. She underlined it. Then she opened her book of puzzles and marked the page she was working on. She closed the book and fell asleep. Dreams of new openings and unseen tactics dancing in her mind. Outside, city lights shone through the window. The world was large and sometimes cruel. But Kiara felt a quiet resolve. She had faced the glare of publicity and the cold of bureaucracy, and she had held her ground. Tomorrow she would return to the chess room, her mind sharp, her spirit calm. And she would play not as a homeless girl, but as Kiara Jackson, genius of the board. The morning sun painted the sky in soft pinks as Kiara woke just before her alarm. Today was the final day of the National Junior Championship, and she felt a flutter of excitement mixed with calm determination. She dressed carefully in her school uniform, a crisp white shirt, navy skirt, and her silver Nike keychain clipped to her backpack. Denise was already awake, packing snacks, granola bars, apples, and a flask of hot chocolate. "Eat well," her mother said, handing her a plate. Kiara smiled. The shelter kitchen felt warm and comforting this morning, a reminder of how far they had come together. On the bus ride to the tournament hall, Kiara stared out the window. The city moved past in sharp angles and rushing people. She thought of the days she spent in the library, reading chess books and dreaming of a board larger than the folding one she carried. She thought of Marcus Ellington, who had believed in her from the start, and who now held a special reserved seat in the audience. She thought of Amina, her friend who had become both rival and partner in her chess journey. And she thought of herself, no longer just the homeless girl, but a true chess player ready to make her mark. At the registered table, Kiara's name was called for the final match. Her opponent sat across the board, a boy named Michael, known for his patient style and deep endgame skill. He nodded politely, and Kiara returned the nod. They arranged the pieces in silence. Denise waved from the front row. Marcus gave her thumbs up so subtle it almost went unnoticed. Kiara pressed the button on her clock. The game began. Michael opened with a Reti opening, a sidewise knight move that aimed to control the center without pawns. Kiara recognized it, but decided to try something different. She advanced her pawn 2 squares on the king's file, inviting his knight forward. The audience grew still as both players focused. Denise held her breath. Marcus leaned forward, his thumbs together, eyes bright. Kiara felt the world narrow to the board's 64 squares and the 64 thoughts swirling in her mind. As pieces moved, Kiara thought ahead 2 or 3 moves, picturing the board after each potential exchange. Michael's knight hopped into her pawn's path. She accepted the pawn trade, then brought her bishop out to pin his knight against his queen. The clock ticked. Michael paused, his eyes narrowing. He shifted his king's rook to free his knight, offering a pawn in return. Kiara weighed the offer, then accepted. She moved her knight in a sweep that threatened his unprotected bishop. Michael's face betrayed surprise. He pressed his clock and adjusted his strategy. The mid-game unfolded like a dance. Michael built a pawn structure on the queen's side, aiming to break through. Kiara countered with a central pawn push, creating tension. A few moves later, she sacrificed her knight on a key square, forcing Michael's queen to retreat. In return, she gained 2 connected passed pawns, dangerous threats that could march toward promotion. Marcus's eyes sparkled. Denise clapped softly, muffled by her hand. Kiara kept her face calm, though her heart beat fast. Michael fought back, bringing his rook into play to attack Kiara's pawns. Time dwindled on both clocks. With 30 seconds left, Kiara spotted a tactic, a discovered attack that would fork his king and rook. She moved her pawn forward, unleashing her bishop's threat. Michael's jaw tightened as he realized the fork. He tried to counter with a check, but Kiara's king found safety behind a pawn. On his next move, Michael had to give up his rook to avoid immediate checkmate. The audience gasped. With only 10 seconds on her clock, Kiara calmly pressed the button, then slid her queen forward to deliver check. Michael nodded and tipped his king. "Well played," he said quietly. Kiara moved her queen back, ending the game. She had won the National Junior Championship. The hall erupted in applause. Denise wiped tears from her eyes and jumped to her feet. Marcus clapped and stood, his face radiant. After the awards ceremony, Kiara took the stage with Denise by her side. She accepted the trophy, a gleaming silver cup etched with her name and a certificate of achievement. When the announcer asked for a few words, Kiara nodded, cleared her throat, and spoke into the microphone. "Thank you," she said, voice steady. "Chess taught me to think ahead and to believe in myself. I started playing in the plaza for fun. Now I stand here as champion. I want to thank my mother, who always believed in me, and Mr. Ellington, who showed me that my talent matters." The crowd cheered again. Later, outside the hall, a small group of reporters approached. Marcus gently guided Kiara and Denise under a canopy. One reporter asked, "Kiara, how do you feel after winning?" Kiara paused, thinking. She looked at Denise, then at Marcus. She said, "I feel proud. I feel like I belong." She smiled. The cameras clicked. Another reporter asked about her background, but Kiara shook her head. "I prefer to talk about the game," she said. The reporters accepted her answer and turned their attention to her moves and strategies. On the bus ride home, Kiara held the trophy on her lap. She thought of the plaza bench where she first drew attention, the school dorm where she found friendship, the tournament hall where she proved her skill. Denise sat next to her, resting her head on Kiara's shoulder, both of them smiling and exhausted. When they reached the shelter, Marcus was waiting in his car. He stepped out and opened the back door. "Congratulations, champion," he said, offering Kiara the biggest hug she had ever received. That night, Kiara lay in her bunk, trophy on the small table beside her. She touched the silver cup and whispered, "This is ours." She clutched her notebook, filled with notes on openings, middle games, and end games. She thought of the days ahead. More tournaments, new opponents, fresh puzzles to solve. But she also thought of quiet afternoons at the library, where she would still read and learn. She thought of Denise, who slept below, her bag of books tucked under the bed. She thought of Marcus, whose quiet support had never wavered. As Kiara drifted to sleep, she felt at peace. She had crossed the threshold from survival to success, not through charity, but through her own mind and heart. She dreamed of future games, of rook sacrifices and pawn promotions, of the click of pieces and the hush that followed a brilliant move. And she believed that no matter where she came from, her genius would always shine on the board. And that was enough.